timely webinar on Mercury and phasing out lighting, uh, mercury containing light sources. So I'd like to say very briefly about first why I'm here and my role. My name is, I'm going to be moderator today, so I'm not speaking on any of the topics. I am the executive director of ECEEE, the European Council for an Energy Efficient Economy, which is a European-wide NGO focused on promoting evidence-based knowledge and information on energy efficiency. So we think this word evidence is really important, and we arrange the summer studies every 2 years, for instance, to generate really peer-reviewed knowledge so we can move the energy efficiency agenda forward with knowledge and competence. Um, Therefore, I'm particularly happy to be sitting and sharing this webinar because it is really based on a lot of research and evidence and not about opinions. So I think this is a very, very nice thing. I am also very pleased to be here because my background, apart from being a generalist in energy efficiency, is actually to work with lighting. And I'm working, when I'm not working with ECEEE, I'm working a lot with lighting as well. So I'm really happy to be here because of that. So today's webinar is organized by CLASP, which is an international NGO devoted to promoting product and appliance efficiency, and the European Environmental Bureau, which is I think the best way to describe you, but Elena, you can do that when it's your turn. It's a federation of environmental organizations. So the focus today, what we want to achieve today is as you know, there is the ROSE regulation on hazardous substances and electrical and electronic waste. Uh, it's about phasing out mercury based light sources. But the point here where we think is really, really interesting, and maybe there is no better, I haven't heard of a better case where you get so much additional benefits. I mean, the purpose of ROSE is simply to phase out dangerous chemicals when it's technically and economically feasible. But now I think we are in a position where we have so many great side effects, and that's what we want to show today, and why it's important to move forward with this agenda. As you know, this is greatly delayed, but still we now have a proposal, and the aim of the organizers is, of course, to present briefly what the proposals mean, why this is important, and to encourage you all to make your voice heard in submitting public comments to the European Union. And the public comment period closes in about a week. It's a different for different of the product groups, but your aim should be like in 5 days up till 2 days. So and you will hear more about this. A little house rules. This is not a Chatham House rule, and as I think you all have had a note in on your screen that we are recording the webinar. The one reason is that many people have asked us to do so because they couldn't join today, but they want to be able to log in and see and hear what's being said. So we are recording for your information. Also, there will be a question answer function if you look down at the bottom of the Zoom window. So when you want to ask specific questions to the panelists when they've spoken, please write them there. They may write a specific response, and it's only until they've responded that the question will appear publicly. But we will also see if we can raise some of those questions depending on how many we get in the short discussion afterward, or if there is a clarifying question in particular, which we maybe, I think that the panelists should actually voice for you. We have our first speaker to just jump into the seminar is Dr. Eliarita Korhota. She is not being able to join us today because she is somewhere where she couldn't. She has kind of double appointments, but she's also somewhere where she has problems with her internet connection. So she has actually recorded a short presentation. But we think that Eliarita is a very good person for us to speak because she knows very much the history of Rose. She is now the delegate of the Consultative Commission on Industrial Change to the European Economic and Social Committee in Brussels. But her background is a PhD in environmental politics, and she is a former member of the European Parliament for 15 years until 2014. And she was an active member in the committees for environment and energy and industry, and also vice chair of the internal market. So she actually knows a lot about the rose and so on. So I will just hand over to Eliadita's recording, please.
I'd like to thank CLASP and EEB for inviting me to open this webinar. I think it is very apt since I was also at the beginning of today's discussion on the ROS Directive, which unfortunately has become a story of how great initiatives can go badly wrong. In giving you this opening address today, I'm going to offer my direct and personal opinions based on my experience and years in Parliament. I come from Finland. I have a PhD in environmental politics, and I worked as an elected member of the European Parliament for 15 years. During that time, I served on the Environment Committee, and I was actively involved with the ROS Directive too. As a former EU lawmaker, I remain a passionate follower of environmental politics, including the flaws and frustrations that can accompany these policies. As you can imagine, one of the problems encountered in the EU environmental policy and lawmaking is the abundance of overlapping mechanisms. Individual cures may work, but when used in parallel, they can interfere with one another, causing confusion, errors, and limited progress with policy goals and objectives. This situation can be unpredictable, confusing, and insecure for investments being made by the European investment industry. And unfortunately, lobbyists working on behalf of some of the industrial players often seek to exploit that confusion, playing a role in exacerbating issues in these overlapping policy measures to distort, delay, and even destroy these excellent initiatives developed within the EU institutions. One example of this playing out is how fluorescent lighting has been treated under the Reduction of Hazardous Substances, ROS Directive. This directive had all the elements of good environmental law, an end to pollution from highly toxic substances in both domestic products and imported goods. ROS has been drafted by the European Commission with support and improvements from the European Parliament and the Council, and became member state law in 2006. The message was very clear: be prepared to restrict the use of 6 hazardous materials in the manufacture of various types of electronic and electrical equipment. One of those substances is mercury, which is listed by the World Health Organization as one of the 10 most hazardous elements regarding human health. Mercury has been used in various lights, bulbs, and tubes over many years, and the ROS Directive was drafted to monitor the market, the evolution of technology, and ultimately to stop the use of mercury in lighting. Mercury waste is known to get into the groundwater, the sea, and consequently it has been detected in a number of food chain species, including seafood and bees. It is responsible for thousands of brain-damaged babies. This is why it had to be banned. I may not be an MEP now, but I am and will always be both a mother and a grandmother. The European Commission, under pressure from certain major lighting companies, allowed a derogation on the basis that no alternative existed. However, in 2016, independent research on behalf of the Commission by Öko Institute concluded that alternatives did existed already, and the derogation should be cancelled. For many of the high-volume lamps, including the linear fluorescent tubes and compact fluorescent bulbs. Yet, here we are, 5 years later, and the requirements in the regulation are still the same as they were drafted a decade ago. Fluorescent lamps are still allowed to persist in the EU market. Why is that? The Mercury exemption technically expired in 2016, but the lighting industry has been successful in delaying the revision because, to use their own language, it is highly profitable, a cash engine, according to a large light bulb supplier. The second argument of the big players was socio-economical. They maintained that this decision to ban mercury would endanger European jobs. It took many years to do the research by the Eco Institute again, but they finally concluded in 2020 that there are no harmful socio-economic effects, and even concluded that jobs could increase if the derogation was to be removed as recommended. I am a frustrated former lawmaker. How can this unnecessary delay be allowed to happen after the due process of the EU codecision procedure? Unless things change, the failure to implement laws correctly stifles innovation and advancements that could have been made in new product designs. This is a matter of legal certainty. Those who take our legislation seriously and invest in clean technology should be rewarded, not penalized and frustrated. If all the EU's mercury-containing lamps were to be replaced with a highly efficient LED design, that would account for 3.2% of the EU's Paris Agreement target on emission reduction. It could and should have started 10 years ago. And what really worries me even more is the European Commission is about to publish its excellent Fit for 55 initiative to slow down climate change. It will be contained in multiple directives and legislation running to millions of words, but they have failed thus far to implement the objective of the ROS directive, written 20 years ago, to remove toxic mercury from our homes and offices. Let's hope that now the revision process has finally begun, albeit 6 years late, that the Commission will now accelerate this process and capture some of the environmental and economic benefits from getting rid of toxic mercury-containing fluorescent lighting. I'm very pleased to have all of you with us for this webinar today. Some aspects of what you are about to hear today will be at times both compelling and shocking. Thank you for your attention. And now I pass back to Niels Borg, our moderator.
Thank you very much, Rita. Although you can't hear us right now, but I will now jump straight over to our next speaker, which is Elena Limberidi Settimo, and she's a policy manager, European Environmental Bureau, and product manager of the Zero Mercury campaign at the EB. And she's also part of the Zero Mercury working group and co-founder of an international initiative. So I'll without further ado, Elena, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Niels. Good morning, everybody. As you heard, indeed, I'm working at the European Environmental Bureau, which is the largest network of EU environmental citizens organizations. We have over 170 member organizations from 36 countries. We've been working on mercury since 2004 at the EU and global level, following policy developments, as well as carrying out projects on the ground in developing countries to assist in the implementation of the Minamata Convention on Mercury. Next slide, please. Mercury, as you know, is a heavy metal. It's persistent and it's a global pollutant. It's toxic to human health and the environment, especially to the developing nervous system. Its most toxic form, methylmercury, bioaccumulates, biomagnifies, and passes the placental and blood-brain barrier. It's a possible carcinogen and can cause tremors, insomnia, memory loss, neuromuscular changes, headaches, or even dementia. In Europe, roughly 1/3 of all births are born with methylmercury levels above the safe limit. This is why action is already taken, but also still necessary at European and global levels to reduce and, where feasible, to eliminate its use and exposure. Next slide, please. One of the mercury-added products still widely used and which can cause mercury exposure are the fluorescent lamps. As we already heard, in the EU, the mercury content of fluorescent lamps is regulated under the Restriction of Hazardous Substances Directive, which actually bans mercury and other substances from electric and electronic equipment. Mercury-added lamps have been allowed in the form of an exemption. The European Commission has published the proposal to phase out some of the mercury-added fluorescent lamps currently, but also to still extend the use of other lamps which still contain mercury. We are currently, as we heard, in a 4-week public consultation. However, the first deadlines are approaching fast. So it's very important to have your say and give your feedback to the European Commission so that we phase out these large categories of fluorescent lamps without any further delay. Let me give you a little bit of the history to underline why it is important to act. Next, please. The proposal from the European Commission actually comes with a 5-year delay. The validity of the exemptions was due to expire in July 2016. Before the European Commission, before this date, the Commission had to take a decision. However, already at that time, the Commission's consultant, the Eco Institute, already recommended that a phase out by January 2018 would be feasible for the typical household compact and office linear fluorescent lamps. However, no Commission decision was taken. An additional socio-economic study was requested in 2017 after industry pressure, which was only published in July 2019, however, with data from before 2016. In parallel, discussions have been going on under the Ecodesign Directive, which looks mainly at the energy efficiency of products, including lighting. Under this process, the Commission consultant, VHK, already proposed at the time a September 2020 phase out for all these fluorescent lamps. However, they did not consider at the time the recommendations which happened under the ROS discussions. Again, industry pressure on Commission and Member States led to more delays. And finally, when the regulation of Ecodesign was adopted in 2019, it includes a phase out by September 2021 of the screw-based CFL and also from the linear ones by September 2023. And again, no phase out was foreseen under this directive for the pin-based CFLs and some other lengths and types of linear fluorescent lamps. Next, please. However, by the end of 2019 and 2020, new evidence and data came into light via a study from the Swedish Energy Agency and CLASP. The studies showed significant benefits if a September 2021 phase out was to occur for these pin-based CFLs and also the T5s and the T8s from environment and health point of view, from the avoided mercury use and the mercury and CO2 emissions, as well as the savings from energy lamp and also electricity. Another important finding was that there is over 90% compatibility of LED lamps, which can replace all of these household and office fluorescent lamps without additional cost one-to-one. Next, please. As a result, these data were actually confirmed by the Commission consultants. And on the basis of those, the Commission requested that their 2019 socioeconomic study be revised. The result showed significant socioeconomic benefits if a 2021 phase out was to occur. around 30 billion euro net savings for Europe, over 300 terawatt-hours in electricity savings, and over 3 metric tons of mercury from mercury used in lamps and also from emitted from power stations. However, while imminent decisions were expected, it still took the Commission 1 more year to come out with its current proposals. Next, please. Furthermore, I would like to remind you that a decision to phase out mercury in lighting could be seen as a test to the European Green Deal pledge to ensure a toxic-free environment. In addition, a ROS decision has global implications, which can result in scaled-up benefits, and this cannot be ignored. It would also fit directly into the Minamata Convention process, the COP4 preparations, and the African Amendment towards a global phase-out of the main categories of fluorescent lamps. We further consider that such decisions would position Europe and its industry in the driver's seat, and therefore such a Green Deal opportunity should not be missed. Next, please. And that's why it is now important that we and you give our feedback to the Commission proposed ROS amendments. And this is because LEDs are readily there and they carry in place not only these big fluorescent categories, but also other specialized categories. Regrettably, industry strategies is still to maintain mercury fluorescent lamps exemption. And now it's really important to avoid any additional delays for higher environmental and socioeconomic benefits. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks a lot, Elena.
Thanks.
Really, really good. So it's a really good overview of what is needed and why mercury is important to do and the options. And I also think it's good that you reminded us all that there is a global link to this. It's not just a European issue. These are transboundary emissions, but it's also products that are traded globally. So I think this is a very good reminder for all of us. I'll hand over to our next speaker, who is Mike Scholand. Mike is, I've known Mike for many years. He is a really good lighting engineer and a lighting policy analyst and a modeler of energy systems sent from heaven, actually, because you can really manage those last things. You are a senior advisor at CLASP Europe, and in that role you work a lot to support governments around the world to implement energy efficiency program and policies focused on appliance and product policy. And you have also worked a long time before, also as a for many years as a consultant to the Department of Energy in the US, based in London. So Mike, I'll just hand over the floor to you to continue drill down into the more technical details of the proposals, but I think these are really important to understand what's at stake and what can be done, and also the cost of the delay. It's not just like, let's wait a year, we'll all get them out, because every day costs money, and this is what you are going to show now. Please.
Thank you, Nils. Oh, sorry, I jumped ahead. Yeah, so thanks everyone. Nice to be with you here. Mike Scholand from CLASP, and I'm going to try and focus on two aspects of this topic. One is the cost of this delay, which Elena and Ayarita highlighted for us, and also the Commission's current proposals on the ROS directive. So I like to talk about the 4 pillars supporting the phase out of fluorescent lighting. There are public health reasons because the mercury is so toxic. There are available today drop-in replacements for, as Elena said, 91 to 93% of the existing luminaires in Europe can take a direct drop-in replacement, and they are cost effective, and I will get to that in my slides. According to Osram-led Vance, they're called now, the payback is can be as low as 4 months. And there's a hyperlink there to the website where you can see that. I calculate a little longer than that, but it's still very nice to see that sort of statement coming from industry. And of course, LED lasts much longer. You get 2 to 3 times longer lifetime, and you save millions of metric tons of CO2. So key question, are there mercury-free alternatives to LFL? to linear fluorescent lamps, this is the question that DG Environment has been examining. And clearly now today, there are definitely tens of thousands of models available. I went on to the Design Lights Consortium database in the US and checked, and these are LED lamps listed there. There's over 30,000. And we don't have a similar database for Europe, but hopefully one day we will. It's excellent consumer choice. So you get all kinds of diameters, lengths, compatibility with different ballasts, color temperatures, levels of light output, and very high compatibility, as was mentioned. And if you go to the manufacturer's websites, you can find a lot of positive statements about that you don't need to rewire or change the old fluorescent fixture. It's a plug-and-play solution that works straight out of the box. It's quick and simple with safe lamp replacement without rewiring, and you can provide lower system losses while the existing fixtures remain intact. So just looking at the payback period calculation, this is for a T8 linear fluorescent lamp, 36 watt installed in Europe. I use the average non-domestic electricity price for the EU27 of 12 euro cents per kilowatt hour. And I compared it to two tubular LED lamp retrofits. They both happen to be from Philips Signify, they're called now. And the first one is their sort of economy model, which is a lower price unit. You can see it's about twice the price of the fluorescent lamp at €6.77. And then the other one is a professional grade one, which has a longer lifetime, 50,000 hours, and it's about twice the price, again, around €12.74. And I've just highlighted there the row. When you compare this is for 10 hours per day, so a typical operating office, which would have one shift and coming on an hour early, an 8-hour shift, and then an hour later for cleaners, looking around 10 hours per day. The payback period is 4.5 months for the economy grade product and just over 10 months for the professional. And then I want to call your attention to the bottom row of this table with the life cycle cost savings. So the net present value of changing that light bulb is actually, the €6.77 light bulb is actually 104 euros. So it's a very significant savings for that end user over the life of that product. And it's even higher with the professional grade, 136 euros net present value life cycle cost. So a very strong, very compelling economic argument to do the switch. As Elena mentioned, it's been a long wait, but the DG Environment has now published some proposals to the ROS exemptions. And we highlight, there's actually 12 delegated acts that were published across all of the mercury containing lighting products. But we're focusing today on 5 of them, which we think are the most important ones where the Commission needs support and maybe needs a little nudge to go in a little more ambitious direction. So as Elena mentioned, the UCO Institute did a study, was published in July of last year, just about a year ago, and calculated 30 billion euros in savings. Those are net savings, by the way. That includes the cost of bulbs, energy, and luminaires, and then significant energy, CO2, and mercury. I've created a little schedule. It's kind of hard to read, but you will be getting these slides afterwards, so you'll be able to see it up close. But we've just kind of set out the steps that the Commission needs to follow following the have your say period, where they will review comments. There's an adoption of delegated act decision process. The Council and Parliament have a scrutiny period. Then it has to go to the official journal for translation and then publication. And so some of these amendments are scheduled to expire in 12 months or 18 months. But because of what needs to happen, there's almost a year of process that needs to happen between now and the publication date. So those are even further back. And we're estimating the phase out will actually be taking place in the middle or end of 2023. And so that sort of raised the question, well, in the UCO Institute study, they looked at a 2021 phase out. How much is being lost because of this 2-year delay, effectively, relative to the analysts' calculations? So I actually have now answered that question, and I downloaded the UCO Institute spreadsheet. I changed the effective date, and I calculated that the two-year delay is going to cost Europe 12.2 billion euros of that 30 billion savings is going to be lost. And then I divided it by 730 days to see how much are we losing per day. It's actually 16.8 million euros per day that are being lost from this. So in fact, every day matters in terms of, can DG Environment accelerate this process in any way, save a little bit of time in some of these steps. Every day is worth nearly 17 million euros to Europe. It's 127 terawatt hours of electricity savings have been wiped out, 36 million metric tons of CO2, and we're talking about another 2 tons of mercury savings that could have been avoided, that's now been, is likely to be lost because of this delay. The study gives national level breakdowns for all 27 EU member states. It will be published tomorrow, so as registrants to this webinar, we'll make sure to send you a link to that as it goes live tomorrow. And as I say, the 4 largest economies represent about 2/3 of the savings. Okay, this slide has a lot of information on it, and Nils had asked me to make it less dense, but I actually didn't. Sorry about that, Nils. What I wanted to convey here was that for the products, for compact fluorescent, for linear fluorescent, and then the CCFL, EEFL, and others, there are 2 directives. There's the Ecodesign and, of course, the EU ROS. And Ecodesign has already acted on some of these products, but it left other mercury-containing inefficient products for which there are LED alternatives. It left them on the table. It didn't actually phase them out. So in the first column, you see there for pin-based CFLs, Ecodesign did not set a phase-out date. They are phasing out, we will be phasing out in Europe, integrally ballasted CFLs, the ones that are mains voltage in September, but the pin-based will remain. The T5 will remain, other lengths of T8 will remain, and so on. So what the ROS directive is doing, which is really great, is it's picking up those scraps or the products that were left behind, and it's acknowledging the fact that there are LED alternatives with all the benefits I talked about earlier now on the market. And ROS uses a different basis. It uses toxicity rather than life cycle cost. It uses toxicity as a basis for phasing out. So these amendments for the, it actually is proposing to revoke the CFL exemptions for all CFLs. So that includes the integrally ballasted and the non-integrally ballasted in a 12-month period. And as I showed on the previous slide, we expect that to be around the middle of 2023 when it becomes effective. For the, there's a long life CFL category. The Commission has proposed 18 months. We would rather have seen 12 because LED products are a much longer life than any of the fluorescent products. But even if it remains at 18, then the phase out will be in late 2023. For T5s, these were not covered by Ecodesign or not phased out. The ROS directive is taking a very good position here to phase out T5s in 18 months. We would like to see that change to 12, and that's part of this, this effort. And the database that we've put together to demonstrate that there are thousands of alternatives, direct replacement LED lamps that can go into T5 sockets. And I'll provide more information on that later. On the T8s, there are other lengths that were not covered by Ecodesign, which are proposed to be phased out in 18 months. And again, we would like to see that pulled forward to 12 months to have the phase out date happen earlier in 2023. For T12s, these lamps are being phased out by Ecodesign, so DG Environment is just getting rid of that exemption. And then there's also an exemption for long life linear fluorescence, which is proposed for 12 months. So the Commission should be supported on those 12-month activities and ideally accelerate the 18-month ones. For CCFL and EFL, these are backlights for electronic displays, and we feel that it's a little bit confusing how it's set out in the exemptions. The Commission is proposing that no new products containing these lamps shall be placed on the market from the day of publication, and then it says it offers a 5-year extension to products. And I think all the evidence that's out there, there's tons of papers that show that this technology is simply not used anymore. It's been phased out, and I don't really understand why this 5-year extension was proposed. And to keep things simple, we're recommending the Commission simply eliminate this product in a 12-month period, and just so there isn't any confusion about what can and can't be placed on the market. There are no displays made anymore with CCFL and EEFL. And then finally, there's a proposal for a 3-year extension to nonlinear fluorescent lamps. So these will be the U-bend and the Circle Line products. And there are, of course, LED retrofits for those available now. And I've posted a database of them on my website, which you can take a look at and see. So it doesn't actually make sense, in my perspective, to offer a 3-year extension for these products when there are mercury-free alternatives available right now, which are cost-effective and have all the benefits we discussed. So finally, to conclude, Ross is poised to phase out the remaining toxic and wasteful fluorescent lamps that were not addressed by Ecodesign. There is a high level of compatibility, 91 to 93%. They are highly cost effective as well, as demonstrated or stated by Osram and Ledvance. The Ross amendments, which we are highlighting, are the ones I just walked through: linear, nonlinear, compact, and CCFL, EEFL, and the delays already to date appear to have eroded significantly the benefits that could have been captured for Europe. So really, we're trying to encourage as many people as possible to submit comments. DG Environment needs support for the good proposals they've made. They need a bit of encouragement for further ambition in a couple of areas that I highlighted. And really, we want to see if they can accelerate the timeline in any way between now and publication in the official journal, because every day counts. So it's really time to say farewell to fluorescent. Please visit our website and submit your comments today. It's 1 week from now to the closing of the comment period for many products. Okay, thanks, Nils.
Thanks a lot, Mike. A very short technical question came up about whether mercury UV lamps, if you have seen them being for disinfection, if you see them being proposed for phase out as well.
No, they're not. So the Ross directive, is only phasing out products that are for general purpose lighting. So the special purpose ones, such as UV lamps, for those applications are still going to be granted extensions. They're not being phased out.
Okay, thanks for that. There were no other questions so far. I'll just move straight on to Peter. Peter Bennick, he's a senior advisor at the Swedish Energy Agency. Peter has a physics PhD and has been dealing a lot with microelectronics, but you also has a long history of working for the Swedish Consumer Agency, and then in the Swedish Energy Agency, you are one of the key people working on product regulation, eco-design, and energy labeling. And of course, you focus in particular on lighting. You're also one of the, I can say, the founders of the IEA Technology Collaboration Program on energy efficient end-use equipment, where there is a solid state lighting annex, but also you're working on power electronics and other systems that use electricity in. So, Peter, please.
Thank you very much. So I will also give a more personal account maybe of what's happening since 2008 when I started to do Ecodesign. I was also supporting my colleagues at the Chemical Agency when they did the ROS. And already there I discovered there was some challenges, you could say, with two processes, partly with the same aim, but with very different processes. But let's go to the first slide. So yes, I'm a physicist, and then I'm used to basic principles. For me at least, I always need to go back to the basic principles and the basic facts in order to do something. Why do we do policies? Why do we do different things? Always remind myself. And I took a course in climate change 20 years ago. And at that time, we had a lot of time to go. Time was on our side because, of course, we should have time to do a lot of stuff. And the CO2 budget was quite generous at that time. the carbon dioxide level was 370 ppm or something. But now, as you see from this slide, the budget is shrinking fast and much faster than many people think, I think. So the harsh reality, if you follow these numbers, we only have like 7 years to go with the current emission rate. And the depressing fact is that this emission rate, when I did this slide a couple of years ago, it was like 30 gigaton per year, but now it's up to 40. Even after the pandemics, it's quite high. It's sort of increasing all the time, despite what we are doing. So this is not even 2030 we're speaking about. This is like 5 to 6 years from now. And if you are going to do it, divide by 8 billion people, you have 35 ton per person. So think about that next time you order a travel somewhere. You will eat your budget. So that is one thing. And the next slide, which is also a fact that comes more and more now, speaking about circular economy aspects and all that. I don't know if you have seen this. Not many people have seen slides like this. It's from the Circularity Gap report. So what was it, 2019 or so, it was a record high use of resources, all categories, and only a slight amount of that is recycled. So we dig and we use and we spend a lot of energy and resources on all the activities we do across the world. And the next slide, if you want to get an emotional feeling about this, I can recommend this documentary. It's a couple of years old. It's a sad and quiet movie showing a lot of pictures from around the globe, all the different regions, how we dig and we terraform the whole planet for what we can discuss in another webinar maybe. But I think this gives a feeling of what we are actually doing, and it's not circular and it's not sustainable at all. So this is a background to why we do policies and why sometimes I know maybe some people in the audience know me because I'm very active in the Ecodesign committee, and sometimes I refer to this and I feel there's a gap because it doesn't really take when we discuss the economy and figures and numbers like Mike just did. But for me, this is very important. This is actually crucial why we do all the things we do. Otherwise, we couldn't care. We shouldn't care. So next slide. So of course, there are things happening on the bright side, of course. Things do happen, which is good. So this, I mean, I know you all know this. For me, this is also very important and also very useful because it creates this platform we can discuss what we should do. It's a common platform for action. So you have the 17 sustainable goals, and under that you have 169 sub goals, and that's very, very useful when you discuss what to do. So that's good. And if you go to the next slide, you can think about, okay, that's good, or well, it's good in a way because now you see political goals in place in most regions, and EU has their goals, and US is back on track. China have goals, etc. That is good. And another thing about this transition to sustainable society, you also think about, well, the apparent losers, if you want, the coal miners, etc. You have to think about all people, all sectors in that transition. Otherwise, we won't be successful. So of course, the policies are extremely important in that, in how we design the policies. And when it comes down to product policies, well, we see them, they are almost everywhere, not everywhere, but almost, and that's good. However, there's a little devil there with the details, as we say, and which we discussed today. And when it comes to the policies, the design of the policy process are so extremely important. And the link to the overall facts, I think, is not always there. The understanding to the CO2 budget, for example, is not always there because they don't align. As you know, the NDCs are not at all in alignment with the current CO2 budget. So many times, at least at the agency, we speak about the sense of urgency. Do stakeholders have that? Do people have that sense of urgency? And the depressingly fact is they don't, unfortunately. So next slide. So now if I take lighting as for me then as an example, as Neil said, I do lighting, but I do a lot of other things too. But lighting is a fascinating example because we used to have lighting as an example of one of the largest end users of electricity. You see the numbers is from this famous report from IEA, lights, labors lost. You use a lot of electricity, and the projections were terrible. We're going to double more or less unless there were policies in place. And suddenly you had the LEDs, a disruptive and transformative technology just showed up. And also a lot of new knowledge on the relation between light and health also showed up. So that was good. That was a kind of a hope. But that also meant the whole lighting sector changed completely. So legacy lighting companies, they were exposed to extreme competition and had to safeguard their own interests, which I can understand. But that also meant, maybe can explain a little bit why we had to think about legacy companies and new companies when we think about the policy, because they will have different interests. So if I go to the next slide. So as a policymaker, I've been representing Sweden now since 2008 for lighting. All these questions, I won't list them, but you can see them yourself. Actually, it's quite tricky to understand how the market moves and technology moves, and how stakeholders understands this and guarantee the quality and all that. A lot of things. That's not been easy, neither in Ecodesign nor in ROS nor in any other process for that matter. So maybe you should, in a way, be understanding that this wasn't easy for anyone involved in these processes. However, if you go to the next slide, thanks to, if I go now to Ecodesign, which I'm most familiar with, even though I supported the ROS process, by introducing this formal process, there is at least a chance to make a sound regulation. But the basis for that is the preparatory study that are issued by the Commission, and then all the consultations you have with the various stakeholders, industry not least, because they know their own technology the best, of course. And then there is a vote, the regulation is adopted, you have it in place, you have to do the monitoring and enforcement as a member state, and then after 5 years or so, there should be a revision and then start again. And I think it has worked pretty well, not perfect, but at least there is a process in there. So I think from one hand that this has been good, but on the other hand, if I go to the next slide, there are some things to think about. So to start with, then, the good things. Yes, this has been a high-profile legislation because lighting was an iconic application, and you had the LED and everything. People really watched this legislation if it was successful or not. And in a way, you can say we are there. We are approaching the LED lighting society. I mean, we can use LED across the world now. It's nothing to stop it from a technology point of view. And I think at its best, there were a lot of good moments for me personally, and also as a member state and also in the Commission. We had a good and earnest exchange of information between industry, the Commission, and member states. We did agree on the overarching goals and all that. However, I also have to say, unfortunately, there have also been a lot of bad experiences where we suddenly realize we don't get all the information we need to make proper decisions. And soon enough, Sweden, we have our own lighting lab, and we started to do our own research. And then, to my disappointment, we found that industry claims they were not simply true. We didn't find what was said in our lab. We could see that LED performed much better than was said very early on, and challenged the claims from industry. And also the price dropped much faster, and all that. I can have a long list if you want to. And that creates a kind of distrust, because in this process, confidence is of the essence. You need to trust each other that we want to achieve the same thing. From our side, we don't want to kill any industry. We want everyone to be on board and all that, but it has to go fast because of the CO2 budget and all that. When you find that actually someone is, I shouldn't say lying, but not saying all the, and you find that, well, I had to trust my own data, then you get disappointed and distrustful. And that, I think, is bad for the process. So linking now to the ROS, that's what we're discussing today. There we had to see there was a kind of a delaying game where you bouncing back and forth. Okay, this will be taken care of by ROS, no, it will be taken care of by Ecodesign, and was a bouncing back, which caused a lot of delays and not good, and not good for the confidence of the processes, I have to say, from my perspective. And most worrying of all, it's not in line with the global CO2 budget, simply to put it like that. So my last slide then, almost last slide. So this is kind of an appeal to all involved in this process. So just from me as a simple policy officer, please respect the processes. Do not play the delaying game. We don't have time to do that anymore. We have so little time to go. And for the next level, don't undermine the Minamata Convention just because you want to earn some more money. It's not that decent, I think. And you know, the colleagues and people in Africa and elsewhere, they deserve the best technology. We have to have them in order also to help ourselves. For the Commission, I would say, please be brave now. You delayed already. This was going to be happening already in August last year, and for unknown reasons, this has been delayed. Don't do it anymore. Just go ahead, please. And also support the Minamata Convention. Don't be shy. Support it. This is the good thing to do. For the member states, well, we have had a lot of hard discussion with some colleagues because they have had another understanding of what's going on. And I think the only cure to that is you have to do your own research. Unfortunately, it takes time, costs research, but you have to do it. So start with your own market and understanding more. Then you can speak. And then support the Commission to be brave and support the Minamata process. And then finally, to the public, have your say and support this, please. So I think that was all as a final slide. I couldn't help myself. Classic Larsson. It's always good for your mental health. So thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Unfortunately, this is sometimes how we regard, you know, we have advanced technology that can help the solutions, but we look for even more advanced technology so we can develop that a bit more instead of using what is there at hand now. So thanks a lot for this good. I have a few questions in general, both to Mike and Peter, that came up in the Q&A, but I think they require a discussion. So I think, and they are really good to come back. But first, I would like to have invite Peter Six to speak. He's a Chief Executive Officer at Cibero, which is a technology company that develops actually these products we are seeing to be able to replace legacy technologies. And you have been working a lot in various marketing, communication, and sales at corporate institutions and startups. And you also describe yourself as being passionate about innovative and disrupting technologies. And I think this is a good case of such technologies. So, Peter, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for having me today in this perfect organized webinar. Yeah, I will give a short presentation about Cibero and about the possibilities that we have in our hands and offer to the TLED market. The key takeaway of my presentation is that an effective switch from conventional tubes to TLED tubes was previously hindered by compatibility issues. And actually, the compatibility issues from our perspective have been solved many years ago. And we demonstrated that already to the market since 2014. And the main problem now that we see is that a lack of policy and measures is actually now the hindering factor. And that is not helping to provide a strong market push to drive the fluorescent and towards the TLED conversion. So LEDification, as we call it internally, LEDification is what should be happening now and should have been done years ago. Next slide, please. Cibero is an R&D company based in Amsterdam, and we've been here since 2013, inventing and developing groundbreaking innovations in lighting. And around a year, I arrived in this company almost 18 months ago, and we have changed the purpose where we stand for. And so Cibero is giving a light purpose. We're driven by curiosity, and we try to develop meaningful light solutions for a better and healthier world. And this is something on paper, of course, but what we really do is what we practice is what we preach. So we have looked at the Sustainable Development Goals. We selected 5 of them, and everything that we do as a company with 20 full-time employees, a lot of external consultants who help with us from at least 10 nationalities. What we do every day is to respect our core values and to, as I just said, try to invent groundbreaking technologies which help making this world a little bit better. We're owned by Momentum Capital. It's an Amsterdam-based independent entrepreneurial investment fund. And also these owners and management team there are super committed for the long term and aim to contribute and also to meet the targets of the Paris Climate Agreement and the European Green Deal. So that's a little bit about us. So looking at the fluorescent tube versus LED-based tube issues that we see. Fluorescent tubes have been there since 1930s already. And as we all know, and I don't need to highlight it again, but they of course contain toxic mercury. And in the TLED, they count for almost 1/3 of the total mercury pollution in lighting. The EU mandated tube lamp recycling programs for recent decades, but they are inefficient. And still, the installed base is still 12 billion fluorescent tube sockets worldwide. That is a lot. Whilst, if you look at the TLEDs, the tube LEDs, technically, they are there for around 10 years at least. They do not contain mercury or other raw substances. And the waste, the electric waste is there to the minimum. As also Michael Skoland already mentioned in his presentation, the total cost of ownership is so much lower compared to fluorescent tubes. So what is the reason why we're still having these fluorescent tubes? The next slide, please. The initial challenge for the green switch, as we call it, in the tube market, that was because there are multiple control gears in installed luminaire base, and these result in compatibility issues. And in absence of compatibility, you need to rewire it or replace it completely, resulting in another material waste. This has been an issue in the market for a long time, but has it been solved already or not? Next slide, please. Well, from our perspective and also looking into the industry, yes, because there are, as Mike also emphasized earlier, there are solutions on the market. The dominating brands in the EU, all fluorescent tube markets are Philips/Signify, now called, of course, Osram, Advance, and over the last years, these brands have been marketing their TLED portfolio, even though with a little bit of less than full compatibility results. This is a very light market push that they do, but they overcome the compatibility issues for largely all of the installed base of standard fluorescent luminaires in Europe. Zero, though, what we try to do is we offer the compatibility solutions to the market that covers all fluorescent ballast luminaires types. So what we try to achieve as an R&D company, our drive is to work with these partners, with these companies in the market, and try to solve their current compatibility issues to get a compatibility, not for example for 70 or 80%, but striving to achieve 99% compatibility, and together generate a much stronger push for LEDification in the tube industry. So next slide, please. This one is taken care of. If the compatibility issue is solved, why is there still not a very much stronger push for LEDification? If you compare the LED bulb industry towards the TLED industry. The LED bulbs, of course, there are numerous producers and fierce competition there, and there are no compatibility issues at all anymore. So market and legislation basically went hand in hand, and fortunately, almost all households now have LED bulbs. On the tube, though, the LED penetration in the EU is approximately only 15%. So what is the main reason then why there is a perfect solution available on the market? The compatibility issues are relatively solved. Why is there still a penetration rate yet of 15%? Well, you know, the EU market dominated by less than a handful of producers that notably make much higher profits selling fluorescent tubes due to the extreme high volumes. Conventional tubes are cheaper than LED-based tubes, as we just saw in the total cost of ownership slides from Mike. And there are unfortunately, no real incentives for landlords or developers to stimulate LEDification. And we think legislation would be urged. We need that as of today. So in my final slide, where do we stand today? Well, the green switch, as I just emphasized, it will not be happening in the tube lamp market unless it's forced by legislation. And we, as an entrepreneurial company, we have invested since 2016 already, because at that time, of course, as Elena highlighted, the exemption validity was due in June 2016. And we invested at the time heavily in solving the switch to LED compatibility problem. And we've done it quite successful there. We offer our solution in license agreements to everyone in the company, in the market, I must say, sorry. We have been speaking with the market leaders, which I mentioned earlier, already since 2016, for many, many times. But still, the delay since 2016 discourages development of environmentally friendly technologies. Though, from our perspective, as CBOR's perspective, together with the partners that you have seen here today in this webinar, we will keep fighting for the better. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Peter. That's a brilliant presentation, and I think a good round off. We are already at 11 a.m. in Brussels time, but I would still invite you who want to stay. I mean, I just want to say before you leave, and then I would like to have a few questions in the Q&A, which I think deserve some answering and also some discussion if you have time. So I'll just say that please do submit comments. I think we can't say it's not. It's important that people get involved, and maybe you don't agree with exactly everything, but the Clean Lighting Coalition website, it's also on the link here, and will be also in the presentations, offer guidance to submit comments for the 5 priority groups. And there are 12 regulations. So this big phase out is divided in different product groups. You can, of course, go into the Commission website, have your say, and submit for each of the 12 ones. But it is important to support the Commission, I think, in doing this, because it's really about time. Then also, having said that, I had 2 direct questions from Mike. I don't think you need to spend much time on answering them, but I think it's good. One, and I'll say just 2 very quick ones. And one is, Mike, could you simply explain why there are kind of 2 batches of mercury? One is the savings or the mercury in the lamps, but there are also mercury in power stations, how that is related. The second thing is the lost savings. Who carries these lost I mean, the cost? No, the lost cost savings from delay. Who is footing that bill? Is it citizens? Is it companies? Who is paying for it?
Very good questions. Thanks. Oh, that's okay. I'm getting a weird sound. Oh.
Hello.
Okay, there we are. Now you should be able to hear me okay, yeah?
Yeah, yes,
okay,
we
thanks.
do. Thanks.
Sorry, I have too many, I'm overwhelmed with these things. The computers have taken me over. On the source of mercury, it's actually, it's ancient mercury. It's mercury that was emitted into the environment by volcanoes millions of years ago. When the deposits for coal were being created on the planet. So as volcanoes erupted and that mercury was put out into the environment and rained down, it became part of the organic matter that was compressed over millions of years to make coal. So coal today, not all coal, but coal that was near volcanoes contains mercury. And in fact, and so when you burn it, that mercury is then put back up into the environment. It's emitted back into circulation. From those deposits. And the coal in Europe is actually the #1 source of mercury that we have in the EU 27. So it's really something to be concerned about. Ecodesign doesn't take any credit at the moment for the mercury reductions, but it is having an impact reducing mercury because promoting energy efficiency is also reducing mercury. And when we look at the mercury content of the fluorescent lamps that we're trying to eliminate through ROS, it almost doubles the savings. You go from 2.8 to just over 5. So it's a very significant increase, and that's avoided mercury from European coal-fired power stations. So it is just an artifact of that material. The second question, Niels?
Yeah, the second question is the cost of the delay, or conversely, the savings. Who benefit from the saving, and now who is footing the cost of the delay?
Yeah, well, it's the European businesses and citizens are carrying that cost. So the ACO Institute calculated a net benefit to Europe. So that is comparing with a business as usual case, which is where we are sitting today. If ROS had been implemented in time that these products were phased out in 2021, as has been presented in that analysis, those benefits would have been realized. The fact that it was not done at that time, and we're projecting now it's going to be delayed by up to 2 years, those savings simply will not occur. And consumers instead will be paying more for their lights and more energy on their bills, and have to exist and live with fluorescent lighting and mercury-based lighting longer. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Brilliant answers, very clear. I just want to add with the mercury from power station, in one sense, you can say theoretically, the mercury that is in the light sources can, if they would be recycled, etc., you could somehow take care of it. But what's being out from the power station is actually raining down on our soils and in our water. So that is actually almost impossible to protect ourselves from. So I mean, there are good and multiple reasons for the environment to do this. I have a few other questions. If you feel, I see a lot of people stay on, so apparently there is still some interest in this. Policy questions. There's a question to Peter. And I think this is a very difficult question for you to respond to quickly, but it's something maybe to think about. Why do we allow the legacy lighting industry with its clear conflict of interest to have such an influence on EU policy? And what do we do about it?
Well, I'm getting back to the question about formal process. I think when we set up the eco-design process, there is the element of the preparatory study where you have consulting, doing market assessment, technology assessment, economical assessments, and also political assessments. And in that, you need to have the stakeholders with you. You need to have the industry with you. Also because they will be hit by the regulations, so it's fair to them. But you also need their knowledge. How fast can it go? That's why I come back to the question of confidence and trust and agreement on the common goals. I mean, the companies also have to understand they are people working in companies. They are people above all. We're on the same planet. But the Commission has also to understand if you do a clumsy regulation, you will sweep away the foundation for the business, and that is not okay either. And also being a region that is advancing other regions, being the first to do advanced regulations can also have a price because other regions don't do it and they can sell the substandard products. So I think we really need all stakeholders, including legacy industry, to be part of the process. What I do criticize is when you don't think you can rely on what you hear and there are hidden agendas or other things. You really don't understand why they're deviating from the common goal. That's when things are getting frosty and you can think about, okay, throw them out, but that's not the solution. You need them really. We need to be there together to make a fair transition. I think that is the simplest answer I can provide.
Yeah, thank you. It's a good start. Then how do we make them behave that way? That's something I think is a.
No, but I think okay. Again, I think most companies do behave, and also I think all companies have behaved many times. It's just when there was a time when the competition was so extreme, the whole lighting industry just turned around. Of course, you become scared, and then you close yourself and guard your interests, and take some courage to think about the altruistic goals then, and just think we will survive this, we will come out better, and that is kind of a mindset. And I think I also saw that many times when we discuss lighting and also other appliances with the Swedish industry, it takes some time to do that change in mindset. Okay, we will be there in the forefront. Of course, we will be one of the leaders in this transition. It will take time, it will cost some things, but of course we'll do it for the better good. So you had to appeal to both the rational and emotion. We are just people on the same planet. That's the simplest answer I can give.
And I do think people want to do right. I think we need to quit now because I know that it's good behavior to let people to stay with the time. People have other appointments. I want to underline two things and remind everybody. First is this seminar will be recorded, so you can you can go back and listen to something, or you can direct colleagues to this if you want them or friends to listen and learn more, because I know some people couldn't do it because of the short time. Presentations will be available so you can see the details. Also, again, please do go in and submit comments. You do it most easily through the Clean Coalition, cleanlightingcoalition.org website, and there is about the comments process. There will be a link here directly. I don't know if we will get it on screen, but it was in Mike's presentation. I think it was on some other presentations too. So you can go straight in there and you can submit your comments. There are good suggestions for what has to be submitted, and what could be a good answer, and also the links to the specific, so you can see what is a priority product and what isn't. So there are like 5 products that really has a bulk of savings. So please do that, and please continue look at this. And of course, if you're about to change your fluorescent lights, do buy a LED drop-in replacement. I think everything else is bad from all points of reasons. Okay, thank you very much. I don't know if we have anything from our organizers, from CLASP or EEB, that we need to communicate.
No, I think we're.
No, I think we're done.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you,
you very
everyone,
much.
and digital. Well, it's physical for me, to our panelists. Excellent and clear presentations. I think it's been very interesting. I think this is such a good case for how we should work on connecting different benefits with each other and make all the policies more effective. Thank you very much for joining us this morning, and do go now out and submit your comment. Don't wait so you miss the deadline. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
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 Shall we stay online?